Okay, folks, this is another HollyShorts interview. I saved the best for last. Unfortunately, it is the last for the day, so I actually get to go out and have some fun today. I am here with Jess Berry, who is celebrating her director debut. She's done her very first film, a delightful little movie called Daughters. So, Jess, thank you for being here. First off,
Okay.
I have about 18 million questions for you, so I'm like, okay, fine. A lot of times when I talk to actors about theater, here's that look. I don't really like theater. I don't even go to the theater. Why is everybody mean mugging the theater? I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I feel like the theater is just full of magic and I don't understand. I don't know, coming from the Chicago theater, it's such a great community there that, they appreciate the theater. I'm sad to hear that there are other people mean mugging theater. That's heartbreaking.
It's all the time too. Like, and even some people I know that are friends of mine, they're like, I won't even go to the theater. I don't understand because I imagine, an actor's in a live audience, so you're getting that automatic validation that yes, this is terrific, etc. And Chicago's only 90 miles away from me, so I've been to Chicago theater before. I want you to tell your audience a bit about, do you make time for theater now? And then second of all, what is it that lured you in to being in that art form versus doing film right away?
I haven't done theater in a while, and it's really sad for me. I think COVID was a big part of that, but I moved to LA about 5 years ago. So I really had to get my feet and my bearings set here. And so I didn't jump into theater right away. I was doing a lot more TV and film, but I still audition in Chicago through my reps that are back in the Chicago area. And I always tell them, if there's a part for me that is a theater production, sign me up, let me audition. I have had some theater auditions since I've moved here. None of them have come to fruition, but it would be something I'm definitely open to doing, especially back home in Chicago. Yeah. And then really what brought me into the theater community is I was actually working an advertising job when I first moved to Chicago. And it was very stale and it was very cubicle driven. And I had done theater a lot growing up as a kid. And I was just looking for an outlet to really connect with people and build community. And so I signed up for a class in Chicago because I knew it had, world-renowned improv and different storefront theaters. So I was just let me connect with people, let me get involved. And so that was kind of my entry into theater in Chicago. And I'm so glad I did, because then I ended up, doing advertising during the day and doing theater at night. And then until the scale tipped, I was doing both. And then I was fortunate enough to work at the Goodman. And then I left my full-time advertising job. So it was truly the art form that got me from one career to the next.
Nice. I know it might sound like a silly question, but it's really not. So most people that think of theater think Chicago and New York, and you're self-admitted that you're in California. So honestly, everybody hears Hollywood and film. Is there even theater in LA? I mean, is there really?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen friends in productions that are here in LA, and I think they're fabulous. I think they are a little bit more celebrity driven, with their actors. So it's a little bit harder to get into, break into the theater scene in LA if you're at a certain caliber. There's a lot of cool experimental theater happening. I'm just kind of looking to also feed my creativity, but also make a living.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Aren't we all,
Yeah, exactly.
And you are the third person in the last 2 days that's a Midwesterner besides myself. I know your place of birth is Indiana, and I have to self-admittedly say that I used to hate Indiana. So my last trip to New York, I drove there. So I went through Indiana, and so the people were just so nice to me. I was like, well, maybe Indiana isn't so bad, because every time I go, it wasn't a good experience, right? So I'm like, great. So Indiana, we talk a lot about Midwesterners. In fact, you can speak to this well. The climate in LA versus the Midwest, I think, is different for many different ways. For one, you have Hollywood there, we don't. For another, we're just different culture-wise, artistically, things like that. How was the transition going from one place to another? And moreover, do you ever wish that maybe you could just blink and come back? I hate to say it, but come back to Indiana.
I mean, oh, man, it's such a good question, because I love my hometown. I love Indiana, but you're right. It is very different in a lot of ways. I think what is exciting about the world as it's changing, especially with the way everything is moving to remote work. I think there is a possibility to spend more time in Indiana and still pursue, creative endeavors that are entertainment based, where the epicenter of Hollywood is here in California. So I'm really hopeful that I'm going to be able to do more of both. And yeah, sometimes I do wish I could blink and go back. But at the same time, I wouldn't change where I'm at for anything. I love my life in California, but I miss home and I miss the people. And I think the transition was surprisingly okay. I think I was able to find a community in California and in LA that I could plug into other Midwesterners. There are, a lot of Chicago actors that have made the move. So I'm able to connect with them. I think LA and Hollywood is what you make of it. And if you don't plug into a good community here, you can flounder and get lost. But if you find good people with similar values, Midwestern or not, I think you can really build a very robust community that supports you in the same way that, people in Indiana and like my hometown have supported me my whole career too.
Oh, absolutely. You betcha. Back to Chicago real quickly, because I need to figure this out. I don't know what it is. Every time I think Chicago, I think Michael Shannon. So I'm like, did you ever get a chance to work with him, see him? There's something about that man that's just disturbingly delightful. He scares me. Like, I'm seriously afraid just looking at him, because he's like terrifying. Oh, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm like, it's like he's married too. I'm like, can you imagine being in that house? I like you, Michael Shannon. Don't hate on me. But no, seriously, like, what's up with that whole Michael Shannon Chicago thing?
He's a magic guy. I mean, I wish I could say I've seen him on screen, but my time in Chicago did not really overlap with his time in Chicago. Sure. I did see him at a Whole Foods once, and that was like really exciting in Chicago.
Did he look mean there? Because he's probably like staring all mean at the produce too.
He was very sweaty. He had just been on a run. So I think he was still kind of intimidating, even like that.
Right?
Yeah, he's great. What a talent. And like, a great representation of what Chicago theater is. And like Carrie Coon as well, Tracy Letts, like all like the Steppenwolf, the Red Orchid, like these are iconic actors that have made their way into Hollywood. And it's just, I feel like I'm always rooting for them no matter what, even though I've never truly come in contact or met them in the flesh. I hear you.
Absolutely. You betcha. And as much as smack as I talk, I'm like, I'm almost ready to like pitch his publicist, like, can I please? But then I'll be terrified the whole thing. And I'll just be like sitting here like, well, this was nice, so hopefully
I think he's got to have that. Like, I hope that he has that like Midwestern spirit about him.
Oh God. Yeah. I've seen some things.
Terrifying face.
Yeah. Cause watch the Iceman and then tell me that you're okay with him. I'm like, I just cannot. So so there's that whole thing. Okay, switching gears. I know that you went to Miami University, got your BFA, ironically in graphic design and not filmmaking. So I want to talk about design in and of itself. So design allows you different areas. You can be an art director, you can be a production designer, etc., which I know you've done. However, I would like to talk about the connection between design and filmmaking. How is it? Or a better question might very well be, because your background is as such, is it easier for you to envision something visually first before you put it together on film?
I think, yes. I think like I have an aesthetic eye. Like I have that graphic design background. So I'm always looking for beauty and composition and what is pleasing in that sense. And so, yes, I feel like I can see the frame intuitively, or maybe I have that, I've developed that skill over time through, my college training into my first career. But I also think my acting background works really well in conjunction with that, because my acting background brings a perspective of character to the writing and how then it kind of comes from the inside out. Sure. So I really like that directing is a real intersection of a lot of different skills that I've acquired over my time working in a lot of different creative fields. So sure. I think that definitely serves me as I continue to pursue directing.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. Some people may not know this, so please define what a production designer does, because we all have a generalized idea of that, but tell us specifically, what does that mean?
I mean, it's how the production itself looks. So what's on set, what couch is there, what curtains, how all of the staging of the space feels and lives, because it all has, the space itself is a reflection of the character, or it's a reflection of a choice that the writer has made, and it becomes kind of its own character in and of itself. So to give it a design and point of view is really enjoyable. And in my short time of doing some production design for other productions.
Sure.
So yeah, the look and feel of a space and where things are happening in the story.
Sure. Now, I'm told by some that it is almost easier to design someone else's set than your own. Where do you stand on that?
I say yes.
Really? Ironic.
So. I think ironic, because there's always helpful to have a little space, you know, especially
Right.
in daughters. I am writing, directing, producing, playing some kind of version of myself in my own home with my real mother. There's help in having someone else bring a fresh idea and have a little bit of like, oh, did you think of this, or pitching different ideas. So
Right.
I find it really helpful to have, you know, other collaborators on the journey with you, because it gives, you know, more thoughtfulness, more excitement to the production design. Yeah.
You betcha. Now, if somebody happens to be interested in either going into the art of production design thing, I want you to tell them what the most beautiful thing on set is to you from a design standpoint. What is that one that's always the one thing?
The one thing?
Yes, only one.
Only one? The one thing I think that is so important in production design that I think adds specificity to a character are the framed photos that character has in their space.
Yes.
I did a film called A Family Man, and my character, the production designer, put pictures of cats, like all of the cats that I may have had as this character.
Okay.
So the production designer put that much thought in it that they saw this character as a cat lady. And I loved that. I felt like it's so informative, and it gave it life, and it gave it specificity. So
Right.
I think there's beauty in the specificity of choosing the photos that your character surrounds themselves with.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. Good question. Good answer there. Jess, as an actor, let's see here. I love that you've done the shows that everybody wants to do, meaning like you've got your 911s and your Chicago Fire and your Chicago PD, of course, and For the People. Oftentimes people never get to be behind the scenes on TV, and I think they think that set life is so glamorous, of course. Talk to me a bit about the differences between being on a set for a film and television. And then second of all, is there one maybe golden tip you can give to actors? Because they all desire to be on an episodic television show at some point.
Yeah. So I think the main difference between film and television is that film, they have more time. So they are, you know, we're shooting a scene and it is very focused, and they're not trying to live within the machine that is episodic television.
Yes.
So it feels a little bit less intense. There's a more relaxed feeling on set, whereas on television, especially episodic television, it is a machine. They are writing episodes for 13 episodes series, maybe even like there were like 22 episodes in a season.
Gosh.
And it's just like they are working. And so they have a very limited amount of days. So things are usually behind. And especially in these shows like 911, Chicago Fire, there's a lot of stunt work. There's high stakes.
All right.
Rescues, disasters. So there are, you know, they're usually running behind because of, you know, just the fact that a lot of stunt work is happening. So I feel like it's more intense. There's a level of gotta move, gotta go. So anticipating that, I think, is helpful. Walking onto that set is, how can I be of service to this production to make things on time, show up and know your lines? Like, what can I do as a team member of this production to make their job easier?
Oh,
I mean, obviously you want to do that on any production, but I think especially on episodic television, it makes such a huge difference to be professional. And then what was the other question?
Yeah, it's what we're looking for is, because actors are constantly trying to do the episodic thing, what do you think there's one thing they can try to maybe either stand out or get a leg up or just get them farther in the journey towards it?
I think it's actually watching the show that you're auditioning for. I know that sounds like pretty basic, but like once you understand the, how extreme the acting is, like, is it very minimal and dramatic and stoic in a sense, or is it very high stakes and large? It helps you dial in your performance to know that they can very easily take you and just put you in there without much direction.
Sure.
So the more you know about the show, the more you know about the tone, the better you're going to be as a candidate for their selection in the casting process.
Excellent advice, actually. There you go. Now I'm going to allow you to toot your own horn because I am already aware that you're the VP of development at this lovely little place called Super Films. So tell us anything or everything you want about Super Films.
Super Films is great. Super Films is what gave me my start in the production side of things when I moved to LA. I actually started as an office assistant. I just wanted to be around filmmaking, and I got a job in the office and started, understanding how budgets work and what it means to be a producer. I didn't really even fully understand what it meant to be a producer when I started.
Sure.
So like there was so much education that I was learning by being in the office. And then, we had this film, Changing the Game, that now is a Hulu original that we started back in, I think it was 2017. So it has been a long journey, and I was there right at the beginning. And so by being a part of that production and by the owner of the company, Michael Barnett, giving me the opportunity to like really be hands-on and learn, I then was able to evolve and grow and become a co-producer on that film. And then ultimately being the VP of development, because I was constantly using, again, my advertising skills, which are pitching, copywriting, design, and my writing. And again, the actor talent of coming at it from things from character and story and things like that. I was able to help kind of craft my own position within Super Films of being the VP of development, because again, it was that intersection of a lot of the skills that I've acquired over my time. And he trusts me, it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like I applied for the job and got it. I grew into it. And so we work a lot to develop different types of like we're working on docuseries mostly right now to develop it. Take out, but he also has a narrative feature film that he's working on. And these are things that I, collaborate on and help develop and support him in his company as he grows Super Films.
Very, very cool. And that, of course, led you to your first film, Daughters. Yes. So the concept of the first film, everybody always has a reason why they want to do their first film. I found it interesting that your choice was something so very close to yourself. Now, was that decision made because you thought, it might be a bit more simplistic because I know the subject, I know the person, etc., or was there another reason?
I was looking at the stories and the things that have impacted me the most in recent years. And I was so shook by the fact that my mom and I's relationship was changing so drastically and how painful it was.
Sure.
And I don't see those stories on screen necessarily, especially like just two women that actually truly love each other, but yet there's so much pain in the relationship as well.
Right.
And having that be the focus of the story, not some side plot in a television show, but like the crux of the whole experience of the film. And so when I started mining my personal experiences to figure out a story that I wanted to tell something that I could truly speak with authenticity about. Yep. Because I think in the climate of entertainment and television and everything, I think there's a yearning for authentic stories and voices that are specific to the storyteller. I find those interesting from content that I watch, that I love seeing creators bring themselves to their projects. And that's what I wanted to do with Daughters. And so this was a moment that was full of pain, but full of love that I wanted to explore and try to communicate through the medium of film.
Some might say, actually, and I've even heard this said out in a public place, how, and this is probably more so because you are where you are. So LA, Hollywood, there's that connection there. Some might say that it's quite the leap, and that some might think it's not smart for you to become so vulnerable in front of the camera, because you're an actor, because you're involved in all of this, especially in the industry. What do you say to something like that?
Well, I say, one, it's very scary. It is definitely like you said, very vulnerable thing to do. I don't know how well I'm handling it all the time. I always like when I watch films and television when I feel seen by a character. And that's what I want to do through my work is I want people to feel validated and seen by stories that reflect an experience they are personally having as well. And so I think that kind of like surpasses my fear of vulnerability. I'd rather be vulnerable and connect with an audience authentically than kind of feign something that is, potentially not grounded in truth and in authenticity.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does. I follow what you're saying. In your film, obviously there are two leads, you being one, the other one you've already mentioned, which is your real life mother. So bringing something like this to your mother, was she aware prior to I'm a mom. So sometimes we know, but we really don't know. So I guess what I'm asking is she might've been aware, but was she fully in the loop in terms of specifically how emotionally broke really in some ways that you felt about your relationship?
No, it was really, I didn't want her to overthink what I was bringing to her, like with the script. And so I really kind of talked through it with her as much as I could, just saying, this is, I really wrapped it in this idea of, it's a breakup story between a mother and a daughter and how they both want different things in life, but yet they still look at the relationship with love, but are going in different directions. So I kind of pitched those themes to her. So she knew it was going to be a drama. She knew it was probably going to be tense. And she did say, "Oh, Jess, am I going to have to cry? I don't think I can cry on camera." Flash forward, she was able to. So
yes.
Good job, Mom. Yeah, she really didn't grasp what was happening until we actually got back to the house where we were filming and she read the script for the first time.
Sure. That makes sense. I'm going to guess that she wasn't born an actor. And so sometimes you luck out and then sometimes it's like, oh my God, because here's the thing. I don't think people get this. Like Michael and I were partners. We worked together and you love that person. But then there are days where you're like, oh, now we're on a set. We're having a disagreement. Nobody's getting along. Now we got to deal with a whole crew. So yeah, how did you get her to a place because she has less experience or at least give her some kind of comfort with the camera crew, etc.?
Yeah, it was a very small crew. Like it was myself, our cinematographer, Scott Hansen, and then my sister actually was running sound. She has no sound experience. This is a real bootstrap run and gun production. And I think it was just, we did a couple of days where we just had the camera around in the kitchen and just doing like test shoots. And so then she could just get used to having the camera in her space and trying to make it feel more documentary style in a way to kind of ease her into the fact that the camera was going to be very close to her face, which I think was probably the most intimidating part. And then I think also just in the direction, like we would do long takes and we would just talk. And so I would try to just pitch her thoughts to have as she's doing an action. And she was just open. She was open and receptive and professional and like literally a godsend. Like this could have gone a completely different direction. I think it's also a testament to our relationship is that she showed up 110% and she had no idea what she was doing, but she did it because she loved me and she wanted to help me like achieve a goal that I have. And I couldn't be more proud of her. And just the way we collaborated on set, it was truly a gift.
Now, I know you mentioned the small crew, and I'm going to venture to guess, it's a 9-minute film. So I'm guessing that you're not on set, for a week and a half, et cetera. Was it a short shoot?
Well, because it was during COVID. We were able to, there's actually a whole long backstory to this film. I had raised money and saved my own funds to properly produce this in LA. I wanted to get a location. I wanted to cast a theater actress. I had someone in mind from Chicago, actually, that I wanted to cast. Have this very long take, kind of swirling dance around the kitchen island. And it looked very different when I originally had structured this film in my mind and as I was writing it. But COVID happened. And so we had to pivot. And so instead that budget went to buying a camera, and we basically like moved the production across the country back to Indiana.
Oh my God.
And shot it there. And so because we had the luxury of COVID, in the sense that we had all the time, the world was shut down, we decided to shoot with natural light, which was like a 2-hour window every day during golden hour. And so we would shoot 2 hours a day until we got it. So I think all in all, it was a 9-day shoot, which is a luxury for a short film.
Oh yeah.
But we were, it was also Midwestern weather. Like one day it's thunderstorming and you're like, oh, shoot, we can't shoot today. So I guess we'll bump it to the next day. Right. But we had the time. So it all worked in our favor. And I truly think it served the film in a way that I never could have imagined or foreseen when I originally was like working to develop it.
Now, from a storytelling standpoint, there's a number of different things that stand out in the writing, and a lot of us can relate to that. Mothers, everyone has a mother, and there's a daughter there, and there's that whole story there. How much leeway did you give either one of you to improv this? And by improv, I mean not necessarily adding a few words to an original script written, but oh wait, remember that time that this actually, actual memories between mother and daughter. How much of that is in there?
I would say there's a sprinkle. I would say most of it is true to the script and the structure that we outlined.
Okay.
In trying to help, my mom, a first-time actor, remember her lines, I was like, you know what, just make it yours. Like, talk about someone who actually is pregnant and going to be a grandmother. Talk about something that you have experienced in this little moment, this little line that was, parallel to something I had written, but to help her kind of bridge that gap of it coming from a real place. I said, make it your own here. But for the most part, it's pretty close to where we landed on the actual script.
Okay.
Which is crazy.
So there's this line that gets said, and when I heard this, I thought, okay, I think my children have probably said this in some version, probably worse than this, but it's just that ouch moment. Not that it's the only one, but it's the one that stood out, which is, or you could guess which line I'm referring to.
Yeah, I can guess.
You suck the air out of the room. And I was like, oh my, that's a lot there. And I understand where that can come from at times, of course, but some may watch that and the reaction might be similar to mine, which is that a bit much? You know what I mean? That's intense. It's difficult. Plus, sometimes you worry as the creator, will that taint the way the audience looks at her? Did that go through your mind at all?
Yeah, I definitely, when writing this, I wanted to create two characters that were deeply complex, and you're rooting for them, but you also see, their ugly sides too. And I think that's true to the human experience. And, we've all got our good qualities and we all have our ugly qualities.
Right.
And I didn't want one character to be more of the quote unquote bad guy than the other. And I thought that writing that line was a poignant way of showing selfishness that she had.
Yes.
And maybe some unlikable qualities. I find unlikable moments in characters compelling because I think there is, again, I think it makes them multidimensional. So I think, yes, there's a little fear, but I think it creates relatability because we're not all perfect. And I find that deeply interesting in relationships.
You mentioned complexity, of course. Love in and of itself is complex, whether it's a mother and a daughter or other things. So were you more heavily hoping that the audience will take away the complexity? So complexity is not necessarily mean that you can't love someone. However, on the opposite side of the fence, complexity oftentimes breeds contempt. It also can breed confusion. Were those important elements for your characters to have?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to show that we can still disagree, but there's still a foundation of love there and continued support and coming together and affection. And how I think it's important to show an example of being different, but yet still finding opportunities to connect and have a dialogue. And sometimes it's not pretty, but I think it is important to try. And that's what I was hoping people take away from the characters and the story of these two women.
Okay. Now, when we look at pacing of the film, one of the things that I noticed, this is my observation, it feels like it's a yin and a yang, almost like a flashback and a flash forward. So did you particularly, did you decide that that would be the pace of the film? Because it's a nice reflection to be able to see where we are, where we're going, where we've been, where hopefully we're headed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the pacing was really important to me because I never wanted to be indulgent, I guess. I wanted it to feel like how you feel when your mind races, and the moments that feel slow and like, oh, I can't breathe. And like, what is that? That feels like time slows. But then there are moments where, you've said something terrible and then your mind starts to race and like things are like, oh my gosh, did I really just do that? Oh no, and like, how can I reflect in the filmmaking, the human experience of the moment. And so that was really important for me to explore as we got into the edit and made choices about pacing and cadence of how the piece moved.
Right. And during the course of the movie, of course, yourself and your other character, your mother, you have different ideas on things, obviously. Like she's so very concretely set on, the whole, you're on the career side, she's on the children's side. And so, of course, how do you maintain a proper balance? Because as we know in society, if you walk away from the movie theater, there's a lot of us that have very strong opinions on both of those things. So I found it so interesting that, that balance, you keep a nice solid balance between both sides of the fence, not really saying, hey, it has to be this or this, but mom seems almost just like a brick wall, if you will. And she kind of builds this whole presentation of, I'm not moving. It's like, I see you and I'm kind of hearing you, but I've become deaf to this because it's my agenda. Does that make sense? I mean, that's kind of how I feel like she's reacting to this.
Yeah, I think there's like two parts to this. One is I felt like I really wanted to tell the story through the lens of the young woman. Yes. So I did kind of disproportionately show her journey through this and how she experienced her mother in that way of being that brick wall or that tough to penetrate person in the room. But I was hoping through, the flashbacks and showing this beautiful childhood and support that the mother provided to the daughter, that then I could help create empathy for this woman who is a mother and is a good mother and is giving her daughter the opportunity to have the career that she wants. And really, they just wanted different things. And how do I create empathy for someone who that was their biggest goal and they achieved it? And there's nothing wrong with that. And how great that then that's just what she wants for her daughter. But sadly, the disconnect in communication is tearing them apart versus giving them the communication is not available to them to bridge into the next chapter.
Sure. Fast forward to today. So if we look at Jess and her mother, I'm sure that you get asked often in terms of the effect that the film had on your real relationship. So instead, what I want to ask you is at this point in time now, how does your real mom outside of the film view your choices and your decisions as it relates to where you're headed personally and professionally and vice versa?
I mean, they're so proud. My mom was able to see the film for the first time at the HollyShorts Film Festival.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so we were able to bring it there back to Indiana, and she saw it for the first time. She didn't even want to see a rough cut prior.
Oh.
I mean, like, what a brave woman to see yourself on the big screen for the first time, surrounded by your friends and family. She just awesome. But we walked out of that theater and she was just glowing. And so was my dad. And I think, it's hard for them to see my journey because it's a lot of behind the scenes, all the auditions, all the hard work, all the meetings, all the things that I'm doing that have no real tangible result always. And so seeing the film, I think, is something that they can grasp and say, oh my gosh, she's doing it. She's doing her dream. And we're so thrilled and we're so proud. And you keep going. So I think it's made our relationship stronger. And also I think she's able to see how hard it is to do what I do, you know,
Right.
being on set, how long the days are, how patient you have to be. She doesn't see that. She sees the episode of 911 with Jennifer Love Hewitt, you know? So I think it's given us an understanding and like catharsis to some of the sensitive parts of our relationship.
Are you able to understand your mother's way of thinking, or at least appreciate her worries or concerns or things like that in a better or different way?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that I'm growing in a way that is holding more space for her, as, you know, those comments are not said out of disapproval or judgment. They're actually coming from a very, very deep place of love and well-being. And so I try to now just be able to see her point of view while also still holding true to what's important to me. And I think that's, again, what I was talking about with that dialogue of having differences between someone, but still seeing the good intent behind potentially some of the conversations that are had.
Got it. Now, we know that you have screened at HollyShorts, and where's your next step? Where are you headed with the film now?
So next we're headed to No Coast Film Festival in Kansas.
Okay.
Newer festival, but I'm really excited. I want to take this film to the Midwest. I want to connect with, you know, other Midwestern stories and filmmakers. And that's important to me. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Like, do you want to be back? Do you wish you could, you know, jump back?
Sure.
And this is how I'm doing that, you know, applying to festivals that are in the Midwest, connecting with that community as well. And how can we bring more of entertainment back to the Midwest? I'm very passionate about trying to find ways to bring education, bring entertainment, the entertainment industry back to, you know, inspiring young people to go for what they want. And I find that something I wish I had, and I'd like to try to emulate that in the choices that propel me forward.
Oh, right. That's awesome to hear, actually, because I'm a big fan of that. I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, it's tough because it's hard to teach people, like you're talking about. They don't really grasp. They get excited, they want to film, but the technicalities of filmmaking are hard. You know, I noticed in the Midwest, like when you say to somebody, okay, you have to block out this many days, you have to be available, you know, sometimes it's 8 hours and they're like, okay, we're done. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not really done. Or, you know, getting locations and stuff, you know, they love what they see on TV, but they don't really realize, I think, to a certain extent, you know, or like you'll say to them what you do, and they're like, they just can't really grasp. So I'm a big fan. I've filmed in Wisconsin before. I have no issue with the Midwest, but I did end up going to New York because, as you know, New York and LA are like the hub. You know, we do theater and arts all the time. They get coverage all the time. I mean, it's hard for artists here to sometimes get coverage, you know, like newspapers, magazines, any kind of that. So I too am also working on that bandwagon of, there's a lot of great talent in the Midwest, but people 100%. Have to find it. You know what I mean? Or embrace that. And we have some wonderful festivals here. We have wonderful things. So it's definitely something to work on. And also, we don't want to forget to ask you, what else is going on? So what's up next for Jess besides Daughters?
I have a pilot script that I'm really, really excited about. So I'm working on rewrites of this. I've gotten some really exciting feedback from some industry professionals. So I'm hoping to be in a place to take that out in the next few months. And then I also have a feature film that I've written that would take place in Indiana. And so I'm potentially going to do like a short film proof of concept for that, to then, you know, independently raise funds and figure out how we can get that made with a bit bigger of a budget and more support. So, yeah, the hope is to continue to keep making and just, you know, follow the journey that is filmmaking, which is heartbreaking and awesome all the same time, but I love it. So there's no other choice for me.
It's terrific. And then casting Michael Scary Shannon, I got to stop.
Yeah.
I think
Michael Shannon as my dad in something. That would be like my dream.
That's so cool. Absolutely. That would be awesome. I would love that. That would be cool. So this fabulous young lady, again, her name is Jess Berry. I'm going to read off the places that you can find her. She has, of course, got an IMDb profile. She's on Film Freeway. She is on LinkedIn. Her Instagram handle is BRRYGOOD. Any other places where folks can find you?
We just have the landing page for Daughters on Instagram. So it's Daughters Mich_film. And that's on Instagram. We're trying to, you know, keep everybody up to date on what the film is doing outside of just me. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I told you she was worth the wait. Absolutely phenomenal, very classy, very creative, just lovely. Jess Berry, lovely project daughters. Congratulations. I hope everything goes wonderfully for you.
Cindy, it's been such a pleasure. This is truly a gift. Thank you so much.